So Debbie, if I can start with you. If you could tell the group here tonight, what kind of environment that works for adults to succeed who are on the spectrum?
Well, key element to helping adults with autism spectrum disorder succeed is to really minimize to the degree possible the amount of anxiety they're experiencing as they're engaging with that environment. And so what I wanted to bring up were some common things that can trigger stress that would then reduce their ability to be successful. And if you really want to see them shine, I feel it really helps to address these. So for instance, stimulation. So folks with autism, it's like they don't have that filter as easily as we do to filter out noises, even lights. Things can seem chaotic when otherwise it may seem orchestrated to you. And so thinking about the environment, just the space, environment where they work, and try to ensure they have a quieter area to work, that they have a space to go to, whether it is the space where they are actually working or whether it's a place where they can take a break that does have less sensory input if they just need a break. Another aspect to this as well is even lighting. Sometimes even just dimming the lighting a little bit can reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed in a setting until they really can get comfortable and feel like they can really be themselves. I think another aspect of the environment in regards to reducing stress is the nature of the work. When folks with autism are working within groups, it really helps to have things more serial or more orchestrated rather than kind of everyone jumping in at once and being more chaotic. That can be overwhelming, but if it's clear for the individual what role they play, what contribution is being asked of them, it will be a lot easier for them to play that role and to connect and provide the service that's needed rather than expecting them to jump into the group and enjoy it and jump into kind of more of a chaotic setting.
And Debbie, the people who work with those on the spectrum, how do you guide them or teach them to make that transition work much more smoothly?
So I think so that like a manager. So for the manager to realize what the individual's strengths are and really hone those strengths and be available so that when the person is struggling, particularly with a social situation, it's that manager can likely help them resolve that if they just had that support. What's amazing is these folks just think outside the box all the time, like they exist outside the box and they get all these very creative, really neat solutions to problems, and yet some of the problems which may otherwise seem so simple to address, which is what the manager could do so very well, may be really hard for them to put a solution to. So recognizing when that person does appear stressed and offering to provide support and helping negotiate some of those trickier social situations.
Great. So Jill, when you're interviewing someone or looking at someone for a position, what kind of characteristics do you look for? And what kind of characteristics do you think will make someone successful in their particular role?
So I think all of our interviewing that we do now is very social based, which is very hard for someone with autism to talk about themselves. I learned this from Elliot. They can talk about what they do, what they can do, the things that they have done, but talking personally is really hard, and sometimes they feel disingenuous. So if you try to start asking, what do you really like to do, they might tell you, or they might be brutally honest and say, like my daughter, I like to sleep. That's what she said in an interview. She did not get that job. So be careful what you ask for, because you're going to get a brutally honest answer that's very logical. So ask always open-ended questions. Tell me about this. Tell me about how you handled this situation. Those kinds of questions. Another thing I've seen in our tech companies lately is video interviewing, which I think will be very hard for our friends on the spectrum. That already sets up a bias from the beginning. So I think we have to be cognizant of that. In an interview process, we might have 5 people come in for an interview. That might be overwhelming with someone with autism. So just take a look, take a step back at your interviewing practices, even back to the job description itself. If you have a wild job description, I've seen one in the Valley that says, and if you come work for us, we'll give you a free unicorn. That doesn't make sense, right? Especially to someone who's very logical. And they don't come for the foosball table or the skateboard ramp, right? They come to do a job and they're very good at it and very dedicated. One of the other supports that you might give to them is work at home time. So a lot of our tech companies will allow work at home. They will be dedicated and do it, but it gives them a break from all the stimulus that Debbie was talking about.
So once you have someone that you've hired, how do you cultivate their talents to make them even a better employee?
So I think you have to rely on the strengths, right? So there are going to be social situations they don't understand. They're not always going to understand the social cues. So as a manager, and even as fellow employees, you have to help them understand. Be direct, ask questions. They want the feedback. They don't want to stand out. They want to fit in because they've stood out their whole life. You can also provide coaches that are or mentors internally or a buddy. We've done that at my place where I work right now. Another thing that you can do is provide training for your company. So I was on a board with Dr. McMahon and Amy Wadsworth at the U where we created this neurodiversity workforce program, and there's training that goes with it for any company in the Valley who wants it. It's free, and they'll come in, and Elliot's done some of these as well, to explain what it's like to be an adult with autism and how the work environment can work better. I can help you set up with that if you want, but Workfront is a company down in Lehigh, and they did this training. They were going to just do it for managers. They ended up doing it for their entire employee base, and after the training, they had 5 people come forward and say, I'm on the spectrum. So they didn't know because they didn't want to self-identify, but they felt comfortable. So one of the other things that's happened at Ancestry is they had several autists there who got together and started their own Slack channel and their own group, and it turned into an employee resource group. And I would say that probably everyone in this room and most of the people you know somebody with autism. So whether it's an employee with autism or a family member with autism, having that kind of support group can also be super helpful.
Thank you. Debbie, we heard from Kurt's presentation about 85 to 90% unemployment for those who are on the spectrum. How do you recruit, train, and retain those to try to reduce those numbers?
Well, I think starting off what Jill had said in regards to the beginning aspect, which is the interview aspect, realizing that there really needs to be a different paradigm for these folks because that is not where they'll shine. In fact, if you think about what interviewing may have been like for you when you were getting your job, the degree of anxiety you're experiencing even when you may have been very capable of that job, and yet for these folks, their anxiety may already be high, and once you get it even higher, it will just shut them down, and they won't be able to tell you much other maybe than just answering simple questions with yes or no, like that example you gave. So from the front end, thinking differently about the interview strategy to allow them an opportunity to let you know what their strengths are and reduce the apprehension they may experience already by being in that interview role. As far as bringing them on, once you've identified like a person, helping them identify someone who is like a buddy, someone, if not one of the managers, who they can feel comfortable going to if they're struggling, or someone who can keep an eye out if they do see on the front end that someone's maybe taking something personally, which was never intended to be taken personally by that individual with autism, and helping, helping kind of stepping in and helping people understand better. That wasn't personal. This is simply how this person is going to engage with you and other folks. So I think that just having someone connected to that individual who they at the very beginning can just get to know, get to be comfortable with, have a friend there, and could be their conduit, could really help.
Thank you. So Jill, you have a large group here. As a community, what could the members of the community do to help you achieve your goals?
So one of the pain points I have is in the tech community here in Salt Lake or in Utah, in Silicon Slopes, we talk about 4,000 to 5,000 open tech jobs. That's crazy, right? And we say there's not a pipeline of resources, but really there is. That's what makes me crazy. We're doing a little bit better on gender diversity. We're starting to do better on racial diversity. But we've got a whole funnel we can have with neurodiversity and stop looking at them as different, but adding so much value to what we already do and thinking outside the box.
Here, here.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Please.
So do you think, I know we're talking a lot, sorry. I work with Debbie quite a bit, but I think we need training for our companies. Having owned a business, typical HR don't know how to deal with this. So I think we've identified that we have resources high on the spectrum, but I think we need more training for the managers. HR needs to think differently. And I think we need to couple that with the interviews. So if you have someone identified, and they should be able to figure it out. They shouldn't have to say, well, why is this person, not atypical? I think we need to strengthen that team as employers, as well as the individuals that are on the spectrum.
Right. So with Women Tech Council, we have a diversity and inclusion forum, and we have about 70 companies who participate every quarter. We have a meeting, and one of those meetings we had Val, who was the program director for that neurodiversity workforce program, come and talk to all those companies, but they didn't all pick it up. That's how Workfront started. We worked with Domo a little bit, so there's a little bit of that, but you're right. We need to, I don't know if it's reaching out through HR, through the D&I groups, diversity and inclusion groups, but there is training available. There are resources available. I think Amy also does several things through Columbus that we could do. It's just getting everyone connected. It's the hard part. Yeah.
I think another important group to get connected are the other employees. You had brought up this example. Definitely having the managers and the bosses understand autism, but really having the other individuals with whom these individuals work just understand the basics of autism, I think would really go a long way for them to feel comfortable with this individual, which itself is going to go a long way in its own right for that person to feel comfortable there in their new home.
So in a previous life, I was an industrial organizational psychologist. And is that something, their industry, is that something that could help with the training, the recruiting, with the maintaining of those jobs?
I would say yes. I just don't know how many tech companies have access to that or would know how to access someone in that field. But I think it's all valuable. Even if they had employee resource groups and came in as speakers and something like that, or provided extra training.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm an autism sibling and co-guardian to my sister Angie. I was wondering, is there a program based on the amazing opportunities you guys offer for adults on the spectrum? Is there a program that bridges the gap between families becoming more aware in high school to where they won't have that gap coming out of high school when they age out? And is there something that, I love the school system, if there's anything I can do to help advocate for that, but there are programs to come into those high schools and say, hey, we have a program for when your child ages out, because as an autism sibling, trying to find career opportunities is very difficult. We come from Florida, and although they have amazing programs, my sister's dream is to be a coffee barista. She makes really good coffee. And it's really hard to connect with businesses because I think they lack the training and they don't understand what resources that they can provide. And it's not a matter of they don't want to, I think it's just a matter of they're not aware. So is there anything in the high school system that we can do to make the families in high school understand, but also teachers being able to have programs for vocational as well?
Not sure I'm the best person to answer that, but I'll give it a shot. So I've been through this journey, right? My daughter's 23 and on the spectrum. So Amy behind you is raising her hand, probably has a great solution. But I've been on a parent panel for a class at the U for autism on the life cycle. And one of the things I said to all the master's students was, one of you needs to do a project on all the services that are out there that none of us know exist, right? Because it's a hard journey to get through when you don't know. But
Salt Lake City Schools has an autism specialist named Marilyn Price Larson.
Oh, that's just in Salt Lake City.
That is Salt Lake City Schools, which would cover their 3 high schools.
That's awesome.
I'd like to address that too from a larger institutional level, kind of. Again, I guess
remember I was in a room with a bunch of economists yesterday, so I think about the numbers and the funding sources and things like that. And we've done a really good job of taking care of children in the high school system, and they get to stay until they're 22. I have to brag a little that Utah was one of the first states in the country to mainstream kids into public education with funding. It was not an unfunded mandate basis for the public law that has mainstreamed kids federally. But we call it the service cliff. On the handout I left on your tables. And so Columbus, we're a service provider. We started, we really took off when the federal law passed, and we pulled in those 18 to 20-year-olds and helped them vocationally. But we do have this, what I call the second wave of, is kind of the post-ADA wave, and we're just not ready for the service cliff. We're not ready for the 22-year-olds. Their peers are going to get out of school, and they're going to take off, and we're leaving behind a lot of young adults, a huge percentage of young adults too, not just the 2% of autism, but the 8% of intellectual disabilities. And so you really need to look for, we tend to be the bridge there, but so looking for service providers like Columbus, there's, we're out there, we're just hard to find, and the funding just kind of stops. And when the funding stops, the families come to us and say, what do we do next? And I don't know if that's any solace to you, but it's a large problem that we all need to come together to work on.
I wanted to stay on economics for a minute.
Sure.
Since you spent the weekend with economists. To make this work, the economic model that you derive, like for the hub, has to be successful or will not work. How did you develop it, and how is it working?
So again, on the tables, we've got kind of a summary of the economic model, but we worked with the Source and Impact Center to pull that together, and it's many spreadsheets deep, but we looked at things like demographic data, we looked at education, we looked at family income, we looked at the unemployment rate, and we finally were able to drill it down. But really, it boils down to the fact that if you can go to work when you get out of school and you're earning a living, then you break this cycle and you have income over time, right? But these families, I think the number is $2 million over a lifetime it costs to have a child with autism. Are you going to shake your head? Yeah, that's, yeah. So it really is, to me, it's making more of the direct connection to work and making sure that we really find all kinds of work for people and support the families that way, because that's really how you break the cycle. And it's silos of funding. Education does one thing, vocational rehab does something else. I mean, it just really, there's some policy issues that go all the way to the top.
When you were talking about placing someone on the spectrum with a company, how did you develop that system of matching? Did you develop an algorithm, or how did you do it?
No, this is very analog. Actually, how we have developed it is, of course, experience. When we started in Munich, we had 3 people. We went to Allianz. We said they can do anything, so just hire them. And it worked out nicely. But what we typically do is, and that is really important, both for the technical skills as well as for the social skills. We have the guys run through a whole period of 3 to 4 months there with us. During that period, we first of all test if they are from the part of the spectrum that is important for us. And I'm always kind of struggling a little bit with the high functioning, because if somebody is high functioning and is 7 years unemployed, he or she is not high functioning from an employment point of view. And this is what we're, of course, trying to address. But we first of all need to see, are they out of these 30-40% that have the cognitive skills? And honestly, the result of this kind of test is always black and white, because either you have it or you don't have it. I don't have it. I never do the test because I would be so bad. So after doing that, we find out how strong is their IT know-how, and that goes from I am interested, I've done a few things at the university, up to this Martin case, of people that have been basically fallen from the carousel and now are trying to get back on track. And honestly, we have quite a lot of people that are coming from a long-term unemployment to us. And then this is basically done more by our project managers, and at the same time the job coaches really try to find out what are the do's and, more importantly, what are the don'ts. And we need to ask a lot of questions that, especially in the US, we shouldn't ask. We have to, because we need to understand what are the things that really can lead to this breakdown that you mentioned. We need to understand what is it. And the more open our colleagues are with that, the more open we are with our customers, that we reduce basically the probability that it happens as much as we can. Because we try to know in advance what could happen and what happens if, right? And then we have the job coach. I mentioned that briefly before. The job coach for us is the most important function in Auticon. The job coach is the enabler. The job coach is the one who makes sure that it works out in this preparation phase, but more importantly at the customer. And the basis for that is we need to know our people so well. So basically, to finally answer your question, as soon as we understand where are their technical skills, together with their IT know-how, the matching is not so difficult anymore. And basically our customers say, here's the task, we go to our kind of profile list for our people. And the good thing is also, we always can only be honest. If we don't have somebody, we need to say, we don't have somebody with these skills. We could send a tester into a project of data analytics. Yeah, he would just stand up next day and say, "Sorry, Kurt, but that wasn't the deal." So we need to be as honest as our people are, and of course we are. So, but very, very often we find basically a good match between the two sides. But you are right; that was the biggest hurdle we needed to overcome at the beginning.
Great, thank you. Any more questions from the audience?
The Business Roundtable has endorsed social responsibility as a mission for corporations, and that's a lovely altruistic statement. What incentives exist for businesses to include diverse workforce?
I think I'll take that one. The incentives, they're having a better business and having investors who look at you and the model and the role, how you're showing what you're doing in the community and for a better world, and that's why they invest with you. I was telling some people earlier, I was meeting with a large family office not too long ago who has been very successful, and they are actually liquidating their entire portfolio of companies if they're not involved in social enterprise or making a difference in the world. And they're now investing only in companies who are doing that, because as you mentioned, they're now good investments as well as doing the right thing. And I think that's why the Business Roundtable said that it's one thing to make money, but we should all be doing better things for the world. We have a question back here.
So actually, it's more of a comment. I'm Amy Wadsworth that Jill has mentioned a couple of times. And on this piece of paper, it has the wrong contact information. So if you take this paper, I want you to put my contact information instead of the person that is on there, because she's no longer with Columbus. And I've taken over a lot of her responsibilities. So one of the things that was brought up is how do we connect with the high schools and get our individuals in to, past this service cliff, right? And one of the things that we have really tried to do at Columbus is we've tried to make sure that we've built a comprehensive program. So we want to support our individuals in in life skills, in social skills, in work, in all of these areas of life where we can pull all of this together and be able to connect the businesses with the people. So here's my question. What do you think is the best way to connect a service provider and a business? Because we do have different ways of approaching things. And at Columbus, we're trying really hard to stretch outside of that, but I'm a service provider. You know, that's what I do. So, and business training, nah, I don't have that. So, we need to connect. So what would you guys suggest is the best way to make that connection?
For me, it's going to be personal relationships at this point until we have a broader way of doing that. I think we've tried multiple things to get the connection to happen. I'm thinking with the hub, maybe there's a way we could have companies come in and do trainings. You know, let them come in and see and experience what people with autism can do. And then maybe that filters back to their companies. The other way maybe is through internships like we were talking about earlier, that if you hire interns for what you do, maybe you start there and Amy can work with you on the right people for the right fit, and there are other groups that can do that as well. But it's not a long-term commitment while you kind of sort out how you can make the process work.
Once you find a great fit for an individual and the company, and how incredibly happy this partnership became, that will kindle more possibilities in that one setting. And so I think there's nothing like having success to build further upon success. And so having that time and making those relationships and connecting that individual with that right spot is what's going to really open the doors for the next individual who needs a placement and who has, or a job, and who has a similar skill set. And I think your example with your work is a great example of that, of how you started off with the success of a small number and it just amplified because people realized what value there is in the individuals who you were able to identify.
May I just add one comment, which I think is a problem in general. This whole market is so fragmented, and I don't mean Utah, I don't mean the US. This is the same problem around the world. And what I was kind of keep thinking about is how could we make it less fragmented? You know, if I hear the things you're saying, it sounds like music in my ears, and I say those are the people we need to cooperate with, right? And hopefully vice versa. So, but it is, you know, there's a bit here and a bit there, and what it really would need is somebody who connects the dots, and that is a challenge, and we need to work on that. But things like we do tonight, of course, are heavily connecting the dots.
So I've been hanging around this autism thing for a while, and the question I got is like, how's that working for you? I think honestly, the degree of success, so the posters are in the lunchroom, we support diversity. More recently, we support neurodiversity. How's that working for you? At company after company, they make these commitments, but the results aren't there. So it definitely appears, I'm new with Auticon, that you have to wholly abstract, like almost everything around the individual, take them out of the context of everything that was part of that company. And I think that's obviously pro-Auticon, but Kurt, you might speak to the goal of the company to inculcate other companies with these tools.
Yeah, I said it earlier today that we of course want to hire as many people as we can, but more importantly, we want our customers to learn from us. And I think it's a perfect showcase, and I'm very, very happy that both Virgin and Allianz have started to hire people on the spectrum based on the cooperation with us. I always say, don't hire our people, of course, but we encourage them big style. And I mean, this is almost unbelievable, but Deloitte has asked small Auticon, could you help us with our diversity strategy? And our answer is yes, And then we say, okay, and how? No, but it is really fascinating, and thanks for asking, Eric. I think this is what we really want. You know, we don't want to be the only one. In theory, in 20 years, if no auticon is needed anymore, that would be the best of all worlds. But I think we will still need it, but that's a different thing. But I think doing it, trying it, replicating it, that is really the important thing.
We have time for one more.
So I'm listening to all of this, and I'm taking a ton of notes. So in full transparency, I'm on the Columbus board, which I love. Full transparency, I have a 30-year-old daughter who has intellectual disabilities. Full transparency, I'm also in marketing. So I'm looking at this whole thing from so many places, and my brain is like firing off. So when I'm thinking about this from a parent, I'm thinking every 54th child born into this world, they come into this world and they have autism. That is an economic situation that we each and every one of us have to consider, because now from a marketing standpoint, that's a different audience, marketing, right? Who is my audience? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What do they need? That is economics, right? That is marketing. I also look at job coaching, and I'm thinking, okay, so my 30-year-old daughter, who just, by the grace of God in Columbus, is in a year working through Columbus, has a job now for a year, and she's 30 years old, and everything to her is her job, but everything more is her job coaching. So where is the degree? Where is the coaching? Where is the job coach? Is the bridge. The job coach is the secret nugget that makes my daughter succeed. It truly is. So I'm thinking about university, I'm thinking about college, I'm thinking about the degree that makes my daughter succeed is people who train HR managers, people who train the job coach that keep my daughter in a job, and it makes her progressive, it makes her it makes her feel fulfilled in her life. So that job position, that job coaching is everything, everything, everything. And then the last thing I will say is, if we're looking at, 54th child that comes into this world that has autism, and we think about marketing, what do those people need? What do those people value? What can we give to those people? What are the tools? What are the trades? What are the, if you're in college, if you're at university, if you are a job, if you are an enterprise, whatever it is, I just feel like we have evolved in a really, really unexpected way, not bad way, but we've evolved. We're in a new place, people. 54% of the people coming into this world have autism. So let's pay attention to that. Let's understand that. Let's understand that that is a new world. That it's not just, oh, we'll take care of them. Oh, this is, we're going to be diverse and we're going to like pat them on the head. No, this is our workforce. These are the people who are intellectually spectacular. So how are we bringing them into this world, and how are we marketing to them to, dear God, help us that these people with these talents and these skills come in and they actually would bring value to our companies. Let's flip it on its side, because those people that I talk to, this young lady over here, they have skills I can't even imagine. And I just think it's time to flip. It's time to flip and stop being
Debbie, Jill, Stephanie, Kurt, thank you very much for being here and sharing your knowledge with everyone tonight. Joel, Jeff, thank you so much for putting this together. And I especially want to thank all of you for being here tonight, because so many of the things that you heard, you can do. And And by taking the time, by showing up, you can make a difference. And I like to believe that when you come to an event like this, that you may meet someone or you may hear something that may change your life. So thank you very much for being here, and I'm going to turn the program back over to Joel.
Bravo.